In today's video, we're going to be discussing Bluefire for Motorhomes, an application and adapter that you can put on your RV through an iPad, Android, or other type of tablet to display more information about your engine. I always appreciate it when people put comments in my various videos. I read almost all of them, I reply to most of them, and whenever I get a suggestion for a new video, I put it down in my notes and try to get to it when I'm able to. And one comment that I've gotten in a bunch of my videos is asking about this iPad that I have on the side window that seems to be displaying additional engine gauges. And people are wondering what it is, how I like it, and have asked me to do a video about it. So that's what we're going to do today. So the observations that it looks like it's additional engine gauges are absolutely right. What this is a program called Bluefire Apps, specifically the Bluefire for Motorhomes version of that. Bluefire is a small company, and what they do is they make an adapter that plugs into your OBD2, J1708, or J1939 port. Those are your diagnostic ports, and depending on the type of RV you have and its year range, that will determine which one that you have. And what it will do is then it sends via Bluetooth information to a tablet. I use an old iPad that I have, but you can use an Android tablet. They also say they can do Amazon or Windows 10. The reason why I originally decided to buy it was that my first RV, which was a Holiday Rambler Endeavor with a Caterpillar 3126, had very little engine data that was displayed on the instrument cluster. All that you got was oil pressure and engine coolant temperature, essentially, and those two were on gauges that really were not particularly accurate or seemed to be very well calibrated. And so I wanted to dig in a little bit more and understand better what the actual temperatures were. Part of this is just my engineering nature in general, though I'm always going to want more data than what any instrumentation is going to give me. So I did some research, I found this Bluefire product, and I decided to buy it. So at this point I've been using it for close to 4 years, and I used it on my previous RV, the Endeavor, and then now I'm using it on my 2001 Prevost XL2. Like I said, what this adapter does is it lets you get additional engine data, but it also goes into other parts of the powertrain. Now, the exact data that you're going to get is going to depend on your RV and specifically the ECU, what data it has, and then what data it's transmitting. It's not going to display everything that the ECU knows. Let me show you how I have my screen set up to give you an example of what this product can do. So this is how I have my screen set up, and this gives you an idea of what you can do. So I have across the top just engine RPM, boost pressure, oil pressure, battery voltage. You might notice that it is set up for a 14 volt system instead of a 28 volt system, and part of that is because on a lot of the accessory circuits, Prevost actually works in a 14 volt setup. This is an important note though, because Bluefire says that their adapter is specifically designed for 12 volt only, and if your adapter port is set up for 24 volt, then you might have an issue with the adapter breaking. They say that it's very sensitive to voltage, although in the time that I've had it, I really haven't had any problems. Second row, speedometer, coolant temperature, engine load. What this is essentially how much power you are demanding from the engine for the particular RPM that it's at. Transmission temperature, then oil temperature, and then barometric pressure. Over here I have a couple of text items. That just shows odometer, what gear the transmission is in. That's kind of a nice one to have since your commanded gear is not always going to be the gear that you're actually in. Fuel rate, so that gives you your fuel flow in gallons per hour. Gives you an instant fuel economy as well as average. Coolant level, that's something that the Series 60 has, which is really just a sensor that either says you have coolant or you don't, and then an hour counter. And those are all things that the Series 60 ECU will provide over the J1708 connector. Aside from the app, the second part that comes with this, and this is really the important thing, is the adapter. What you have here is just a little adapter that has LED lights for indication purposes on the top of it, and then on the back side you've got a connector of some sort. This is the J1708 connector, and then the J1939 is a 9-pin connector instead of a 6-pin. They make references on the website to the OBD2 connector, but when you take a look through the store, the only adapter they seem to be selling now is the J1939 connector that has an adapter to the J1708 connector. So the OBD2 one may have been one that they made in previous years. I really don't know too much about the history. So what are my overall thoughts on Bluefire after using it for close to 4 years? The app itself is fairly clunky. It doesn't exactly do anything very quickly. Some of that I think has to do with the Bluetooth interface connection, but even just like if I tap on the screen to go back to the main page, it takes several seconds to do that. Everything is kind of at that slow pace and not what you would expect from an app these days. The interface itself is really pretty simple to use. Getting the gauges that you want added and set up properly can be a little bit clunky as well, and it doesn't snap to a grid. The nice part about that is that it gives you a lot of versatility. You can see I can move these gauges wherever I want, and if you have an ECU that can give you a whole lot of data, maybe you want to have some gauges somewhat on top of each other or nearby that, and it's nice to have that flexibility. They also don't have to be this size. You can make them larger or smaller depending on whatever is going to help fit them better and what size you need them to be for you to be able to read them easier. Probably my biggest gripe with this is the number of Bluetooth disconnects that I get. It's very common for it to disconnect from the adapter, and it's not something that I've ever been able to pinpoint why it's doing it or how to make it stop doing it. Sometimes it'll go the entire day without having any disconnects and it'll work just fine. Sometimes it'll seem to disconnect every few minutes, and again, there's no kind of triggering function that I found that makes it obvious how to stop this from happening. My primary gripe for the Series 60 is that I can't display the intake air temperature on here, which I was able to do on my previous RV. The ECU does know what the intake air temperature is, but for some reason that interface is just not into the Bluefire adapter, so I'm not able to display it. But that's really the only piece of information I really wish that I could get that I otherwise am not able to. The cost for the adapter is pretty reasonable, and if you already have a tablet that you can run the program on, then that doesn't cost you anything extra. So for what you get and for the price that you pay, I think that it's a pretty reasonable option. On my previous RV with the 3126B and very poor engine instrumentation on the instrument cluster, this was a no-brainer. This really was very nice. I didn't even have a boost gauge on my previous RV, and being able to get all of this additional information was very, very helpful. On the Prevo, I have much better instrumentation from the factory. Although the Prevo will display both transmission temperature and oil temperature, it will only display one at a time on the little instrument cluster digital panel down here. And if I display those, then I can't display the instant fuel economy gauge or the trip meters. And for the most part when I'm driving, I like to display the instant fuel economy. So I can leave that display here on the dash, and then on the Bluefire I can have my transmission temperature and I can have my oil temperature. Another nice thing is that you're able to set the bands on your gauges to be different colors for different ranges depending on where you want them. So for example, on my transmission temperature gauge, I have green up to about 210 degrees Fahrenheit, and then I have yellow from 210 to 230, and then red from above 230. So you can do that for all of the gauges. One other example, and I actually need to update this, is that for RPM, I have my RPM band green from 0 to 2400, which was actually from my previous RV because that was the normal operating range of the engine. But then I had a yellow band from 24 to 2900 because when I was in an engine braking mode, the engine was allowed to over rev up to 2900 to get some additional engine braking. So those are the kinds of things that you can put on the Bluefire that you don't necessarily have on your normal instrument cluster, and that's a nice feature of it. Another nice feature of the Bluefire is that it can read diagnostic codes and display those for you. I haven't had to use this feature so far, and on my Prevo, it actually will display diagnostic codes again on this digital display down here. So in this RV, this doesn't really buy me a whole lot, but in my last RV, where I did not have anything that would tell me the diagnostic codes, this was a valuable feature, or rather it could have been if I ever had a check engine light. Especially when you're on the road, that lets you find out what's going on and give you an idea of whether you need to address it now or whether it's something that you can wait until you get home to get addressed. If you're looking for additional instrumentation on your RV, this is really a good way to go. It's pretty cost effective. It's a little bit clunky, but the versatility that you get that goes with that, in my opinion, is worth it. I hope you found this video on Bluefire useful. If you have any additional questions, then leave them down below in the comments. And as always, thanks for watching.